Marine life environment. Over 1 billion people lack access to clean water in developing countries. Both the United Nations and World Health Organization report that 80% of diseases in developing nations stem from consumption of and exposure to unsafe water, which kills more than 25,000 people each day. These diseases are an effect of water pollution. More than 13,000 beaches were closed or under pollution advisories in 2001, which is an increase of 20% from the previous year. We even see some pollution here in our local waters.
We're here at the Raritan Bay, and clearly there is pollution everywhere. But conditions have actually been getting better over the past couple of years, because the pollution years back was much worse actually. So there's definitely room for improvement when it comes to the pollution, but we are getting better.
Clearly, the tide lines in Staten Island continue to bring in debris from the ocean. However, the government does have ships that go out and they try to pick up the debris that clashes in the tide line. And despite the fact that you do see some debris here, things over the last few decades have actually dramatically improved. And that's proving out not only on the beaches here, but also obviously in the waters and its effect on wildlife.
So when there is pollution on the water, there's boats that go out and try to collect it. There's two of them here. I don't know if you can see that. Clean Harbors. So they kind of make sure that the waters are clean. Also, some of the bigger boats here have something called booms on them. And what they do is they kind of put kind of like a barrier, a floating barrier around the boat, so that if the boat has a leak or something like an oil spill, the oil or the spill will stay contained within the boat, and then they'll just collect it so that it doesn't further pollute the waters. So conditions are getting better, processes are getting more advanced and better. So today I am at the Tottenville Marina in Staten Island, and I'm going to interview my uncle, Captain Frank Masseria, on his boat, Vitamin C. He has been a fisherman on the local waters for over 40 years, and hopefully he'll be able to give us some insight about the conditions on the water and how it affects sea life. So let's go on his boat and see what he has to say. So this is my uncle, Captain Frank Masseria. He's been a fisherman for about 40 years now, and I was wondering if you could give us some insight about the waters here on the bay from like an environmental perspective.
Okay, so you're right. I've been fishing for well over 40 years, and I've seen the waters of Raritan Bay, which is where we are now, and all of the surrounding waters clean up incredibly. 40 years ago, 35 years ago, the PCB levels in these waters were so high that striped bass, which was and still is, a prime game fish and a prime commercial food fish, was off the menu. And we were not able to fish for them, and you couldn't eat them because of PCB levels.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 30 years, environmentalists have really begun to crack down on big businesses, and the water quality has improved dramatically. One of the things which I just showed you shortly is the fact that oysters are coming back. Raritan Bay was probably one of the greatest oyster beds on the east coast of the United States many years ago. As the water deteriorated, they left. They couldn't thrive. Now we're seeing them come back. From a fishing perspective, fish that we were told not to eat, namely the striped bass, blue claw crabs, shellfish, are now edible from these waters. Shellfish are harvested from this bay every day by probably 100 small hand rake boats. All of the clams that you get in your local fish house probably come from Raritan Bay. What they do, though, is each basket of clams at the end of the day is taken by a government monitored truck sent to a purification plant, which is basically UV light, and the shellfish are sterilized. 24 hours, they're bivalves, they just circulate water, they become clean, they're edible. 40 years ago, you couldn't do that from here. 35 years ago, you couldn't do that from here.
So while we do see pollution on our local beaches, Captain Frank has made it clear that the conditions are in fact improving. Evidence of that is the oysters that he mentioned earlier. Many decades ago, the Raritan Bay was a hot spot for oysters and scallops. However, due to pollution, they have been missing for many, many years. However, very recently, oysters have become present once again. You can see the oysters growing here on the wall. Because it is winter, the birds here don't have much else to eat, so they pick out the oyster from the shell, which is why we see the open dead shell. Despite this, the fact that the oysters are even here and growing once again is proof that the conditions are improving, because oysters can only thrive in clean water. Therefore, this is a significant indication that the waters are getting much cleaner here. So, what type of fish inhabit these waters?
Well, we have a variety of fish. Striped bass, bluefish, fluke, also known as summer flounder, winter flounder, porgies, sea bass, blackfish. There's lobsters, there's blue claw crabs. The water's getting so clean now that during the summer period when the water is excessively warm, fish from the south, as far as Florida, migrate up into our waters. Fish like amberjack, jack crevalle, grouper, triggerfish. They're plentiful in our waters during the height of the summer when our water is the warmest. And that's definitely directly related to the fact that our waters are cleaning up.
So, the scallops, which is a cousin of the oyster, they're also coming back to the Raritan Bay, along with the oysters, which I showed footage of before. So now, what about mammals? Are there any mammals in these waters?
Strangely enough, there are mammals. Whales, humpback whales, pilot whales, bottlenose dolphin, and during the cold season, like now, fur seals or harbor seals. And they're abundant in our waters. Years ago, that wasn't true. There are some boats that leave from New York City, Manhattan, to actually go and sightsee seals sunning themselves on the rocks on two small islands next to the Verrazano Bridge. All a testament, again, to how the water is cleaning up.
Captain Frank has even captured live footage from his boat.
Oh my God. That's a humpback. Oh yeah. Holy mackerel. I got that one. That breached.
Right in front of us!
Holy crap.
Woo! Stop the boat! Unbelievable. He's under the boat.
So this is my dad. And so he lives right by the water, so we often smell the low tide, and people often attribute that with pollution. So what actually is that smell of the low tide?
I thought Dad was going to answer the question, but you're
You wanna
asking me,
answer?
I'll answer it. Go ahead, Dad.
Okay.
Well, all right, I'll paraphrase what Uncle Frank said. So basically, what he's saying is that it's a phenomenon, a natural phenomenon, by which bacteria, good bacteria, if you will, basically filters out bad bacteria, much the way these biofilters that people use for fish tanks in their home. So essentially, the people associating that terrible smell with either the waters being polluted or otherwise is really not the case. And in fact, despite the smell, something good for the environment is actually happening.
Yeah, it's nature keeping things clean, doing it
Okay.
her way. So, very important. Something I forgot to mention, is the water's so clean. We even have seahorses in our water now that we catch sometimes when we're catching bait, for a fishing trip. So it's amazing how clean things are actually becoming.
So conditions are getting better on the water.
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. Even though our water is cleaning up locally, we should not forget those that are not as fortunate and only have polluted water to rely on. Developing countries do not have access to the filtration technology that cleans water. In these developing countries, 70% of industrial waste are dumped into their water supply, making their water unusable. Because of this, we should all do what we can to keep our water clean globally. We could participate in cleanup efforts, reuse water, and keep runoff minimal. With the help of people around the world, we can make the world's water clean once again.